find effective ways of creating change and inclusion in our communities. You have come to the right place if you believe in truth, justice, and coffee. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, this is Lead the Way, and I'm Anna Gaucher. You are going to be so glad you decided to tune in to this episode as we are about to learn how to make a big impact in our communities through our interactions with food. Connor Raboine is co-executive director of the student-led organization Slow Food UW, and he has a lot of good information to share. The mission of Slow Food UW is to promote affordable access to good, clean, and fair food by engaging the Madison community in a food system that is socially, economically, and environmentally just. Now that I have you excited, let me take this opportunity to remind you to rate and review Lead the Way on Apple Podcasts. Okay, now let's get into the interview. Can you start by telling me a bit about you and your background?
I'm from a small town in southeastern Wisconsin called Burlington. It's kind of it's between like Lake Geneva and Kenosha. And so I lived there my whole life. And I came to UW-Madison because I had family who had graduated from here. And like I kind of got in the whole food system work and stuff because growing up, I grew up kind of in a disjointed household because my parents got a divorce when I was like 9. And my mom used a lot of community resources and family members to make sure that like food, like that we always had food on the table. So that's kind of how I got involved in where my passion started. So that's kind of where I've come from now. And I'm pursuing a, human development and family studies degree is my primary major in the School of Human Ecology with like a minor in food systems and global health.
Wow, that's awesome. What made you focus on that major and minor?
I think it had a lot to do with like trying to understand the more like nuanced aspects of divorce and family life, the messy stuff that a lot of people experience, but they don't really like to talk about, or but it ends up having like kind of a big impact on their life in the long term. So I thought that was really interesting. And I guess a quote that I've heard one time is that you usually get a degree in yourself, and that's kind of like where I kind of like fell in love with the idea of HDFS, and then the food system kind of blends back to like my mom using those community resources to make sure that we had food on the table and stuff like that.
How did you get involved specifically with Slow Food UW?
So my cousin Mara, she was a director with the South Madison branch of Slow Food. Just kind of a background, South Madison branch is our community outreach side of things, where we work with students at the Boys and Girls Club and other community centers, primarily in South Madison, but we also do some work on the north side. But she was the director of that branch. And my freshman year, my first semester, I really hadn't kind of found like my people here at UW. And so coming into my second semester, she kind of heard that from my mom talking with her mom, and said, "Well, you know what? You should just come with me to one of the community meals." So I went with her one February night to our family dinner night, and I sat down, and I guess the rest is history. I haven't missed an FDN or cafe since that beginning of my freshman year. So I've been there now for 3 years with Slow Food. It just kind of was like a life changing, like I guess career altering experience that first time.
Wow. What was your first official role with Slow Food?
My first, I was a Slow Food like aficionado for those 3 months. That like just like going to all the meals. But then my first official role, I was a garden club intern, which was working with students at the Boys and Girls Club, and we did like garden activities. We planted seeds. They have a little plot on the side of the building. But working with those kids is how I ended up getting like fully immersed kind of in the Slow Food.
Will you tell us a bit about the mission of Slow Food UW and how it is distinct from the broader slow food movement?
Sure. So our mission, the most chapters of Slow Food kind of follow the general mission of good, clean, fair food for all, and we kind of follow that same mission, but obviously it looks different because we're in a different community than other chapters are. So for us specifically, we try to bring like local. We try to create a campus community and like greater. We try to bring the campus community and greater Madison community together um, through food, through that central mission of good, clean, fair food for all. So what that looks like is we have 2 meals a week, family dinner night, and then cafe on Wednesdays. This is we haven't really in the last several months because of COVID, but um, we do those meals and we invite everybody in the community to kind of come and share in like that central aspect of making us human, which is connecting through food. And we kind of try to center all of our programming around that. Um, but then, like I said, with our South Madison branch, we try to bring that same feeling and understanding of food to students in the community, primarily young people, um, because as a little bit of an aside, our the South Madison branch got founded through a urban farmer named Robert Pierce, and he's a longtime farmer in South Madison. He runs the South Madison Farmers Market. But we asked him like 13 years ago now, like what can we do to like connect our mission with the greater for the greater good of like Madison, but primarily South Madison. He said, teach kids how to cook. So basically what he was saying is like just connecting these kids with their food and trying to make that like the central focus of some of our programming. So that's kind of how we took good, clean, fair food for all and applied it to the campus and the city of Madison.
What is the size and scope of what it's become now?
Yeah. So in in terms of interns on any given basis, we have between um, 45 to 60 interns on a semester in any given semester between like our three branches. And we have, it's kind of, in terms of like, we don't have like a set structure in terms of who can be a part of Slow Food. I mean, we have interns in terms of like kind of having consistent roles, but we, our community has grown like the site. We have like 7,000 people that follow us on Facebook and then like about 2,000 on Instagram. So we have quite a few people that have followed us and that are a part of the community that are familiar with Slow Food and come to our meals. But yeah, I guess like in terms of formal investment in the organization, we have about 60, which is the largest campus organization, a campus chapter of Slow Food in the country.
And how do you estimate your impact? How many people you serve?
So we've been trying different methods over the last like couple of years to try to actually gauge what like some of our like impacts are on the community. I would say on any given week we provide between 300 and 500 meals to students and community members. But we actually figured out last year in terms of the total people hours and um, amount of money that's gone directly to farmers, we've contributed like $100,000 in the last year and a half of total yeah, people hours and then money invested into the community via like our programming and like purchasing power through our meals.
Talk to me more about the programming and how you're supporting local farmers.
Sure. So right now specifically, we've kind of pivoted from the meal format that we've kind of championed over the last 13 years. And we're working with Robert Pierce, that farmer from South Madison, and a couple other farmers in the area that we've had relationships with. And we are connecting their produce because a lot of their stuff has been they usually have contracts with restaurants or um, different um, like schools and stuff like that. But because of school not being in session and restaurants being in a limited capacity, we've kind of pivoted to try to provide them a market and a purchaser of their goods. Um, Through our program, we now call it Slow Food to Go. So like every Sunday, we have orders open from Monday through Friday. People purchase an order, or they can get a pay it forward basket, which is our community members subsidize these baskets so that anybody um, can get fresh local produce, because we want to really emphasize that for all aspect the of the slow food mission. So that's what we've been doing now, and we're kind of looking to continue this project into the spring, because a lot of farmers still either have greenhouses or they have squash and apples and potatoes and different kinds of produce that can winter. So we're just trying to provide an avenue for these farmers to get paid for their crops, but also for people in the community to get fed.
What was the transition like for you when quarantine first started? And I know that it was really strongly hit by restaurants, the impact of lockdown. How did you approach that moment and your decision to pivot from your community events?
I think it's been a long like kind of transition period that we had turnover in our director. So I was newly director this year with the other co-director, Libby, and our prior directors, they both graduated. So there was this really weird transition that usually that happens regardless, because we're all students. But on top of that, yeah, because of COVID, we didn't have the same idea. We didn't really understand what it was going to look like at first. So we had a lot of discussions among the interns in the organization, among our advisory board, trying to figure out what we could conceivably accomplish while still maintaining the safety of the community. And we came up with a bunch of ideas, like could we produce food and then bring it to people's houses? But at that time, the jury wasn't still in on whether or not producing food in the format that we usually do is safe. So we actually came up with this slow food to go idea early on in August. So it took us that long to kind of distill our ideas down to like one kind of central focus. And we spent the month of September kind of, or half of August and then the month of September kind of fleshing out this idea and setting up the framework for what Slow Food to Go has kind of become. But yeah, it was incredibly difficult, but I have to give props to all the interns in our advisory board and then all the other directors for like really kind of pushing us forward and knowing that a lot of like you could definitely like let back on the gas during a time like COVID. But we kind of wanted to step our foot on it and try to make sure that we could feed as many people because we know a lot of people are struggling in the Madison community. So
And what's it been like cultivating relationships with local farmers? Is there a formal process for that? Or is it kind of like however you come about someone new, you move forward as you see is appropriate?
So there's kind of two ways that we've come to develop relationship with farmers. Some of it has kind of been institutionalized into slow food over the last 13 years, where we get produce from the same farmers as we got 13 years ago. So those relationships have continued just because slow food has continued to exist. But on the other hand, we always look to create new connections with farmers, and a lot of time that happens like via consistent like getting this produce from them at the farmers market one time and then starting to kind of like cultivate those interpersonal relationships that we hold so deeply in slow food. So that's primarily how we get it is through the institution that slow food's kind of become, and like meeting people at the farmers market. But sometimes farmers tend to know other farmers, so like a lot of times they can be like, oh, if you're looking for this farmer has that, so you can go reach out to them. So it's a lot of informal social networks, but like every farmer that we've met has been super awesome, and we're happy to work with all of them.
Your mission talks about advancing food justice. Will you explain what that means and how you see the current state of food justice in Madison?
Yeah, I think um, kind of the overarching idea of food justice is that there's structural issues with our food system that exclude certain groups of people from participating, from accessing clean and healthy food. Um, so basically, the achieving food justice would be getting rid of those inequities and those disparities within the food system, and making sure that everybody kind of has equal access to good, clean, and fair food. Um, in the state of food justice, I guess, in the Madison community, I think much, um, there's so many great things going on in Madison revolving food. Um, I mean, there's the Roots for Change program that is working with REAP Food Group to bring um, fresh local produce from farmers to the Latinx and Indigenous population in Madison. There's Troy Farms that looks to, um, they're on the north side. They look to bring food to individuals in that area. They do a really great job with that. And there's a lot of great stuff on campus that we've been involved in. I think there's a lot of potential in Madison just based on how um, ingrained food is to not only the Madison area, but to the Midwest as a whole, as like kind of like the producer of the United States, with with a lot of food and stuff. So we kind of have it in our DNA a little bit. So I think there's a lot of potential. But I think if you ask anybody who's in food justice, we're we'll probably never be content with the state of the food system until every person has access to healthy foods and foods that they want to eat, But I think we can always strive to be better, and I see a lot of that ability to be present in Madison. So I'm excited to be here, and like I know a lot of other people that are in similar work kind of share that feeling.
How can you best measure what you're doing and the impact that you're having on the community?
Some people try to take it from an economic standpoint, like how much money, and like I know I mentioned that number earlier about that impact on the community. But I think at the end of the day, slow food isn't, it's not about like like economic prosperity in Madison. It's about making sure that people are able to connect through food, and that like food is available to people. And I think that a lot of what we pride ourselves on are those connections. And I know it's not like a really concrete way of like collecting data or projecting our impact, but like it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's like in the smiles that we get, in the people that like come up and thank us for like working with their specific program in South Madison, or um, the like I guess from more of a data standpoint, the amount of people that use our paid forward program, and just the amount of relationships that come to um, like that come to fruition because of what we do, I think is how we measure it. But it's really, yeah, it is. There's no concrete way to measure that. But I think all the people in slow food would probably say this, that they can feel in the meals and in our events, and then the people coming to pick up their baskets on a week to week basis, the like the connection that we're trying to um, like build that foundation for is there. And I think that's what drives people at the end of the day.
And how do you, like, who can pick up a meal? You say you don't ask questions. How do we spread the word to people about who is eligible to pick up a meal and how often?
Yeah. So like on a usual basis, like when we're, yeah, business as usual, everybody's welcome. All community members are welcome to come to Slow Food. We have no restrictions on who's able to come, whether they're paying or they're using paid forward. We want to. The only restriction I guess we have is the amount of people that we can bring into this given space, like pre-COVID times, and hopefully after it's safe to kind of get back to work. But we we primarily spread the word through like our Facebook page, our Instagram, and we have a newsletter that we send out each week through email. Um, but that's primarily how we get the word out.
Your name is Slow Food UW. Is the organization affiliated with the school?
We are a registered student organization, but in addition to that, we are, I don't know for the only 501c3 student led 501c3 on campus, but we're one of few, and we're through that registered student organization like status. We are connected with a school. We have a faculty advisor, but we're also connected with Slow Food, the greater Slow Food Madison organization. It's a little bit smaller now, but I know they're doing great work, and they're trying to get it back up to um, kind of what it was in the past.
I'm really curious about the logistics of how everything comes together. It seems like such an impressive team effort. How do you find your volunteers?
The majority of our volunteers and our interns are people who have come to Slow Food for a meal or heard of it through another person, and they they just come because of the relationships that they have with that person, and they kind of fall in love with the mission of Slow Food. And like I think that definitely like fits our bill of trying to cultivate those relationships. Um, but kind of in more formal ways, we have connections with the Global Health Institute at UW, the Food Systems Certificate, where students who are pursuing credit um, for the Global Health Certificate and the Food Systems Certificate can um, get that credit through working with us. So some students come to slow food because of that, and other students come because of the relationships that they've built with people who are in slow food or the relationships they've built at slow food.
And what are the alternative food system goals of Slow Food UW?
Yeah, we're I think we'd like to see a food system where people interact with their farmers, interact with the food that they're getting, either on a daily basis or more frequently than we are now. Because I think we've kind of gotten away from where our food comes from, and you go to the store and the food kind of it's there, but it seems to be like food from nowhere. Like, where did that food come from? Who picked it? Um, who grew it? Like who drove it there, were like all of these factors that come into getting our food are kind of invisible to us, like in our current food system. So we'd really like to bring back and center people and farmers and consumers and connect them directly, like with each other, so we can start to one kind of heal that food system, and make that food from nowhere become food from somewhere, or someone. And I think that's kind of the integral part of our mission is kind of pushing for that kind of food system, so centering relationships and food, like once again.
When you talk about food interaction, like what's an ideal food interaction? Are we talking about like introducing yourself to the chicken before you take the egg away? What's the whole scenario we should strive for?
I think I don't think we have to go so far to like meet the chicken before it either gives us the egg or something like that. But um, like I think primarily it's getting the food, like a food interaction would be like it just as simple as going to the farmer's market and seeing and meeting the family or meeting the people, that like give their blood, sweat, and tears to bringing that food to you. And I think once we're able to do that, once we center that on like where we get our food, and then food's going to take on a whole different meaning for a lot of people. Um, and like that's the ideal food interaction is meeting that farmer, and or that set of farmers or group of producers or whatever it may be, and um, just kind of having that interpersonal connection kind of start to develop.
We've talked a bit about how the current public health crisis has kind of disrupted the food chain and how your organization is part of that and pivoting as a result. What do you think are some long term positive effects of this adjustment that we're all having?
I think I think there's been a really big one thing that I noticed right away when kind of COVID reared its ugly head was that people started to focus a lot more on like their local communities, like focusing a lot more on their like supporting local businesses, supporting local farmers, supporting each other. There's been a lot of mutual aid programs that have kind of sprung up because of COVID. So I think that there's kind of been this idea that people um, like need to rely on their community or want to rely on their community more so than we have in the past. So I think coming out of COVID, I think there might be a greater emphasis on prioritizing those local connections, making sure that we support our community first, and then like these larger corporations or these larger conglomerates later. Because at the end of the day, I think we've all realized that those that are close to us are the ones who are going to be there at the end. Like those are the ones who are going to be those are the ones who are going to be there and taking care of us, and like getting through some of these more difficult issues. So I think that's going to be the long-term effect of COVID.
Are there additional ways of having that food interaction, supporting local farmers, other than going to the farmers market and meeting different people?
Yeah, there's something called community CSA boxes, community supported agriculture. It's where you buy a share in the total crops that a given farmer is going to produce in that year. So you get like you'll get sometimes they do delivery, sometimes they do pickup spots, but like that's a way that you can like kind of indirectly you can follow the farmer like on Facebook. That's a way that you can kind of see that food, where that food comes from if you have a CSA share. I think another way that you can kind of become the farmer yourself if you have like if you have a like you can pot your own plants. You can grow tomatoes on something as small as like a little balcony if you have something like that, or a little front yard in a little bucket. You can grow basil and stuff in your kitchen. I think that those are food connections that often go unnoticed, but I think I know when I'm picking, like if I regrow a green onion in my kitchen and I take that green onion, I'm like, yep, all I did was put it in water, but like there's something more meaningful there that if I were to just go to the store and pick up some more green onions. It's just like there's some investment, and I think that's a food connection that we can definitely learn to prioritize more.
Thank you so much to Connor Raboine for sharing his insights. I hope you learned a lot about how you can be more connected to food sources in your area, as well as ways to assist others in getting the nutritious food they need. Visit slowfood-uw.org. That's slowfood-uw.org, and check out additional resources in the show notes of this episode. All episodes of Lead the Way can be found on Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. Thanks to Buzz Kemper for his voiceover artistry in the opening. This episode was brought to you by the time and talent of Tyler Willenbrink, Annie Petras, and Jeremy Van Mill. I'm Anna Gaucher. Until next time.